Came from the pain and made it out of Banner. Drove and see the nightlife where they call Atlanta. Southside shows for a couple dollars, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
This is the Brew Party Podcast, episode number 60. We are coming in hot. We're back, episode 60. We're here, NBA playoff preview, kind of a last-minute episode threw together. Original guests didn't work out. We still are getting them on later this week, but I felt like I needed to get something out. I felt like it's been a while, and the Brew Party, we got to be here every week. I'm trying to be consistent. I'm trying something new. So if you're watching us on YouTube, hello, you can actually see my ugly ass face spitting out this rambling, this intro to the podcast before we get into the interview. Trying something new, might start doing this more regularly, might start doing this every time, recording myself on these little intros. If you're listening to the podcast, don't worry. You just have to hear me sound stupid. You don't have to see me look stupid as well. But if you want to, go ahead and check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/The Brew Party. Speaking of social media, go ahead and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Brew Party. And you can follow us on Facebook at The Brew Party Podcast. So this is episode 60. So I brought on my good friend, Paul Lombardi. Paul is the host of the 3&D. It's an NBA and college basketball show on the Review and Preview Sports Network. You can find Review and Preview and 3&D live Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time at Review and Preview Sports on Facebook. They do a lot of good work over there. So Paul is very, very knowledgeable with the NBA, with college basketball, just basketball in general. He consumes it a lot. He's a Knicks guy up in Connecticut. He's on the New York border. So we talk about the Knicks and the league as a whole. Obviously, he does the show. I think he's 17 or 18 episodes in at this point, and he covers the whole league. He covers the entire nation of college basketball. Has been doing a lot of good stuff, even though the NBA is, winding down. I guess I shouldn't say even though the NBA is winding down. Now's the best content. It's the YOFFS, baby. So it's the playoffs. We talk about that. We talk about the play-in game format. We also talk about, LeBron's comments about it. We talk about the Lakers and their path. What's the best path for them to have success in the playoffs? Utah, Phoenix, are they for real? Obviously they're 1-2 in the West, but which one of those teams is going to break through? Which one of those teams is going to be making that deep run here in the NBA playoffs? Then we got to talk about the East. Is it NBA Finals or bust for the Brooklyn Nets? We talk about Paul's Knicks, what the feeling is like around New York, what the feeling is like for Knicks fans, Julius Randle, what he means to the franchise. I asked Paul about the Bulls, obviously, because they're my team. I was convinced we were going to the playoffs when we traded for Nikola Vucevic from the Magic, and it hasn't really worked out. So that's neither here nor there. Great episode coming up here with Paul Lombardi. Really quick. I just want to get some more plugs in here. So go ahead and subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find it, or www.thebrewparty.com. Please help me out. I'm trying to get some more ratings and reviews on the podcast on Apple. Once I get to 100 ratings and reviews, I have a very special guest lined up who said he will do it if I get to that point. So please help me get to that. I would love that. It would mean a lot. So thank you so much to everybody for tuning in on YouTube, or if you're tuning in to just the podcast version, or if you've liked, followed, subscribed, anything at all. I truly appreciate it. Episode 60 of the Brew Party Podcast. If you told me 3 years ago that I would have my own podcast, that I would actually put the time in and do this stuff and, get through 60 episodes over a year, I would have told you you're crazy. And it really is. I know it's not a big thing. I'm not some fucking star or anything like that. Not at all. It's as you'll see later in this interview, this is not a professional show at all. We had ring light malfunctions. My dog starts barking. Paul's phone starts ringing like right next to his microphone. It was a lot of funny moments along with some great basketball analysis. But I think that's been the theme of this show I don't take myself too seriously. I try to have a good time and try to sound like I somewhat know what I'm talking about, or bring on somebody that actually does. So I think this is another great episode. It's an episode, that I put together in just a few hours, and one that I'm actually very proud of. And I think this new format, trying to look more professional. I have a new mic and stuff. I'm planning on I have a fucking lounge chair that I ordered like a month and a half ago. It's supposed to be here mid-May. That's not here yet. Hello, it's almost mid-May. So I would love that. So hopefully the setup will get even more professional. Hopefully we'll figure out how to get these fucking ring lights to stay on, and maybe, out of my glasses there, but not a big deal. Sorry to anybody listening. This is very, very visual what I'm doing right now. But anyway, thank you so much for being here. Let's get you into this interview with the one and the only Paul Lombardi from the 3&D podcast. Recording. I'm taking a sip of our beer. And we're back. Episode number 60. That's right. 60 of the Brew Party podcast. We made it. Haters said we couldn't. I don't know. Nobody said we couldn't do it, but we did it. Episode 60, NBA playoff preview with my guy from Review and Preview Sports, the host of the 3&D podcast, an NBA and college basketball podcast you can catch live on Facebook every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Is that right?
Yeah, 7 p.m.
7 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. Central. So
6 p.m. for you.
Whatever. It's Paul Lombardi. Paul, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Pretty excited for the basketball playoffs to get kicked off, and yeah, it's going to be an interesting week, and I'm excited for it. I'm excited for everything.
Let's talk a little bit about 3&D real quick before we get into it. So you're the host of 3&D for Review and Preview Sports. What kind of content can everybody expect coming out for you now, with the playoffs and the end of the NBA season is here?
Well, definitely a lot of NBA draft coverage is going to be one big thing, but we I cover everything across the NBA and college basketball, anything that goes on the transfer portal, any big commitments to schools, any, big coach hirings, NBA draft stuff, with the playoffs going on, we're going to be covering. Next week we'll have a special previewing each series that's going to take place, including the play-ins, because this Sunday will be the last week of the regular season. I just this past week put out my NBA awards, my predictions for who I think is going to win MVP. All of them. I did my all rookie teams, my all NBA teams, my all defensive teams. So I went all out, and you could really it's I touch on almost everything. So it's like if you're an NBA fan of any team, it's definitely a good podcast. I've done episodes on the Wizards. I've done episodes, on the Sacramento Kings. I'll touch any team that's possible. And we also bring on a lot of good guests. It's a good time, including yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I have been a guest on the show. I love it. I tune in every week. I actually just watched the one from this Monday today in preparation for this show. Just, make sure I, had everything down. And like you said, you talked about almost every team in the league, every team that has a chance to make the playoffs, every team that was in. You gave your NBA awards, you gave out players like first team, and then you even took another 20-30 minutes to cover the transfer portal and new guys that had declared for the draft. So if you are a basketball fan, 3&D is a must watch, must listen show. Oh no. I just had a ring light go out. And we're back. Sorry about that. So let's talk about the NBA season. It's coming down to a close. We're going to do a playoff preview here. So I think there's 3-4 games left. So we're recording this on Wednesday, the 12th. So still a couple games left to go. Mostly everything is set in stone. I guess there's still a couple teams that are technically still alive. So let's just get your general thoughts on, how everything is going in the NBA this past, I guess month as it's been winding down.
I think it's been great. And I think it's, this play-in tournament too, I think is such a good thing for the NBA, because it really gives such an emphasis on the last week of the regular season, last 2 weeks of the regular season, because everybody's trying to avoid this play-in tournament. And we've seen a lot of people disliking it and all that kind of stuff, but it gives some relevance to regular season basketball. And a lot of people, you fair weather basketball fans will only tune in like once the playoffs start in the NBA. But this is really especially for fans of the Knicks, the Hawks, the Celtics, the Heat right now. You want to avoid the play, and you also don't want to get matched up with the Sixers, Nets, or Bucks in the first round. So they're duking it out. These last 3 games, especially for the Knicks, are huge games. They are must wins, all of them. So I think it's been awesome. We saw Russell Westbrook get the triple-double crown as expected. Steph Curry keeps getting closer and closer to the three-point crown. We're watching some of the best basketball of all time right now, and that's for sure. And it's exciting. It's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of teams firing on all cylinders. You have the Jazz and the Suns in the West that are the unlikely, I'll say, 1 and 2 seed. I don't think many people had them tabbed as the 1 and the 2 before this season started. And then, so I want to talk a little bit more about the play-in tournament. You said you're a fan of it. LeBron said he's not. That is the player you were talking about. He said, I don't know who came up with this, but they should be fired. Was it not like a year or 2 ago that he was like for this and said that there should be some type of play-in scenario? So now when you have to go through it, LeBron, you don't want to do it. But I mean, so if we look at this play-in tournament, so the 7 and the 8 will play each other once. The winner of that locks up the 7 seed. The 9 and the 10 will play. The loser of that is out. The winner plays the 8 for the 8 seed. Is that right?
Yeah, 7 and 8 play. Winner gets 7 seed. Loser will play the winner of 9 versus 10, and the winner of that game gets the 8 seed. So basically the 7 and 8s still have an upper hand over the 9s and 10s, because the 9s and 10s have to win twice and can't lose. 7 and 8s have to win once and can afford to lose. Would have to lose twice in order to get knocked out. So there's still an upper hand, but it gives the 9s and 10s an opportunity to leapfrog somebody.
So if we look at the Eastern Conference so the teams that would be playing in this if the season were to end today would be the Celtics, and the Hornets would play for the 7 seed. The Pacers and the Wizards would play for the right to play the loser of Celtics Hornets for the 8. The Bulls are technically still alive. They are 29 and 40. They sit in 11th. They are 3 games behind the Wizards at 32 and 37. The Bulls have to win out, and the Wizards have to lose out for them to even have a chance. And I think that'd still be a tie. They'd still have the same record. I don't know what the season series there between the Bulls and the Wizards is. I'm pretty sure that's what it would go down to. So speaking of the Bulls, I'm going to ask you a couple questions about them because I'm a Bulls fan. And, when they made big splash at the trade deadline, and everybody was kind of like, oh, this is kind of solidifying themselves as a team in the East that's trying to make a run for the playoffs. And it just has not worked. In your mind, what has gone wrong in Chicago?
Well, I think it's still a work in progress. And I think that, you throw Vooch and you throw Otto Porter, well, they traded away. You throw Otto Porter in there, and you throw a bunch of guys that you throw Al-Farouq Aminu, I should say, in there. And it's really a work in progress because it was the second half of the season. They were already dug themselves in the deep hole. Zach LaVine has become an all-star this year. Nikola Vucevic, you don't have to worry about him becoming a free agent. He signed a long-term extension with Orlando a couple of years ago. So he's under contract. You got LaVine. You're going to have to wrap up LaVine, but you're starting to build a good core to be competitive for next year. I think that if you're a Bulls fan, I'd be happy because it honestly, like, being a 10 seed too is difficult. They have an odd chance that they'd even make the playoffs in the play-in anyway. It would be nice to be able to compete. It's going to be nice for the Wizards with how bad they were doing to be able to even compete for a playoff spot. But if I'm a Bulls fan, I'm excited for next year. You got LaVine, you got Vucevic, you got Kobe White is becoming a player. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big Kobe White fan. Al-Farouq Aminu gives you depth off the bench. Hope maybe they'll re-sign Denzel Valentine. They've got some good pieces. I know that Valentine actually really didn't even play that much. He started playing more towards the like he was losing some time. Archie Diacono, we got guys like that, Thaddeus Young.
Thad Young has been arguably like the X factor for the Bulls like all year. It's almost been as he goes, they go. I think he's averaging like 15-5. Don't quote me on that. I don't know the exact number, but he had quite a few good games where he was the motor that drove the Bulls this year. In your mind, what move do they need to make this offseason to take the next step to be a solidified playoff team in the East? Do you have a position in mind that you really think they need to shore up? I mean, selfishly, I'd love for them to take Ayo Dosunmu in the draft, just because as an Illini Bulls guy, Chicago kid. But it's their guards are pretty damn good, like you mentioned. Kobe White and then Zach LaVine is a walking bucket, all-star this year. I think the position they probably need to go look at is the power forward, because you don't know the future of Lauri Markkanen with this team. Is he going to want to stick around? Or are they going to want to keep him around? I think you go get a long and lanky guy that can play with Vucevic and a Levine in those pick and pop scenarios.
Definitely. I agree with that. I think you need, you're going to have Vucevic is going to be your big man, but you might need a 4, because the Markkanen is still a question mark. He shows glimpses of becoming a stud, and then he fizzles out. I saw that he's coming off the bench for them now. Towards down the end of the stretch, Billy Donovan exiled him to the 6-man role, but because you got Thad Young and you got Patrick Williams too. I think Patrick Williams is a great player who could potentially become your number 4, but he doesn't. When they drafted him at number 4, I thought it was a bit of a stretch. But I've been impressed with him his rookie year. He's not putting up gaudy stats. He's averaging like 9, 3, and 3, but he plays great defense. He's a 6'9", good height. He's got good potential to become a scorer too. Like he's a work in progress, and he could end up being that 4. And he's been playing the 4 a lot. But you definitely need some more depth at the 4. It could be even a shooter too. I feel like shooters could be a decent need for Chicago, because they got a lot of forwards who can stretch the floor, like Thad Young and Patrick Williams, who are like 3-and-D kind of guys. But I did knock down shooters.
I agree with that. I completely agree with that. Yeah. So I actually pulled up Thad Young's stats here real quick. He's averaging 11.9 points a game, 6 boards, and 4 assists, shooting 56% from the field. I'd take that any day of the week.
Oh, I would too. Thad Young's a plug and play guy. He's one of the most underrated players this past decade in the NBA, in my opinion. He's always been a good player. Goes out there, grabs rebounds for being an undersized forward too. He grabs boards. He can score. Does a little bit of everything. Can handle the ball too. Like I love Thad Young. I've always been a big Thad Young fan. He used to annoy me when he was on the Sixers playing against the Knicks, but I've grown to like him as he's moved on throughout his career.
So Bulls needs, I say, a 4. Paul agrees with that. Also a knockdown shooter. I think those are 2 very good things that they could add, and hopefully get back to the playoffs. They haven't made the YOFFS since 2017. So that would be very nice. So jumping back a little bit to this play-in tournament, will we see one of the play-in teams advance past round 1? So I told you the teams that are most likely to be there for the East. So it'll be the Wizards, Pacers, Hornets, and Celtics. And then in the West, it is currently looking like it'll be the Spurs, Grizzlies, Warriors, and Lakers, believe it or not, depending on how these last 3 games do turn out. But that's very, very interesting to see a team like the LA Lakers or the Golden State Warriors potentially as the 7 and 8 seed in the West.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if the Lakers end up having to be in the play-in, which it looks like they're going to now, even though they won an overtime one against the Knicks, and they're only a game behind Dallas. If they end up getting the 7 seed, they could pick off Phoenix in the first round. They really could. Just because if LeBron's coming back healthy, I don't know if this is all depending on if LeBron comes back healthy though too, because he's going to play in the playoffs, but he might still be hurt. And we don't know how effective he's going to be. And Anthony Davis has been on the shelf for a little bit. So, and Phoenix has been so good this year. But if the Lakers get tuned into the way that, we've seen LeBron in the past in the playoffs and stuff, that would be my biggest candidate for being an upset. I don't think, even if Golden State were to be the 8th seed or Memphis, I don't see either of them picking off the Jazz as the number one. I mean, technically the Suns still do have a chance of being the number one. They're only 2 games behind the Jazz, but it's with 3 games left, but it's most likely going to be the Jazz at number one. But the Grizzlies, Spurs, they don't really have any chance. And then the East, I don't really see it happening either, because the Sixers and Nets, if you got the Celtics at 7, I don't think they're not beating the Nets at 2. If you get the Hornets at 8, if you get the Pacers at 8, if you get the Wizards at 8, I don't think any of those teams are beating the Sixers. So that would be really the only scenario that I can see a play in advancing is Lakers versus Suns in a 2 versus 7.
So listen to this. So I have a path that the Lakers could probably consider taking to make it either better or easier, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to shout out my guy Trill Withers here, the host of Not Here to Argue. He is a great follow on Twitter at Tyler I Am, basketball, football, anything. He's really funny. So this is his idea: lose to Golden State in the play-in game, the 7-8 game, on purpose, pretty much, to beat Memphis or San Antonio for the 8 seed pretty easily, or you'd like to think they could. You get Utah in the first round, get Denver or Portland in round 2, and you would avoid the Clippers or Phoenix until the Western Conference Finals.
It's true. If they were to do that, and pick off Utah as number 1, it's the equivalent of them being the 1 seed, because then they'd be matched up in the 4 versus 5 the next round. Right. So I could see that. It's a lot of what ifs. They would have to win that next game to get the 8 seed, or they don't make the playoffs at all. And then they'd have to beat up on Utah, which I do think Utah is a legit team. Mm-hmm. And after getting bounced in the playoffs early last year, they're going to be hungry, and they're going to be fierce. They're going to be a tough out in the playoffs. But I can see that, especially if you're a Lakers fan, if they were to win that series, they're lined up for a potential run, because it's the equivalent of being the 1 seed.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned LeBron being hurt. He recently made a comment that said he will never be 100% again in his career. Do you think that's true?
I think to a degree it's true, but it's also something for him to try to help his brand is the thing. So if he wins another title, it's not because he was 100%, like something like that. It's something that he did not need to say. I'm a big Jordan guy, so I've never rooted hard for LeBron, but I respect his greatness. I think he's number 2 over all time. But that's just it's really something that I think he's getting frustrated right now. Those dumb comments about the play-in when as you said, he basically came up with the idea a year ago. He basically said that they should do something like that, but he just didn't expect the Lakers to be the 7th seed. He didn't think he'd be hurt for the longest period of time he has in his career this season. So I think it's kind of like ridiculous, but there is a little bit of truth to it. Mm-hmm. At his age, with the ankle injuries that he's dealing with now too, is only more likely he's only going to have more and more injuries. And, he might not be 100%, but it's for a great player like that, you can't use that as an excuse. And I feel like it's almost him trying to build up. Oh, it's like if he wins another title, like look at how amazing LeBron is. He won another title and he's not even 100%, like something like that. So yeah. It's whatever.
It's whatever. That's a good quote right there. So I'm going to go through the Eastern Conference and Western Conference standings real quick, and I'll give out some favorites and sleepers. There goes my fucking ring light again. I'm just not even going to worry about it right now. So the 76ers are first in the East. Second is the Nets. 3 is going to be the Bucks. The Heat, the Hawks, and your Knicks are all tied. They all have the same record. They currently have the Heat listed in the 4 spot in the East. So the Heat 4, Hawks 5, Knicks in 6th, all currently at 38 and 31. The Celtics in 7th. The Hornets in 8th, Pacers 9th, Wizards 10th, Bulls 11th, Raptors 12th, Magic 13th. The Cavaliers and the Pistons round out the Eastern Conference. In the West, the Jazz are the number one team, 50 wins so far on the year. The Suns come in at number 2, the Clippers at number 3. Kind of quiet year for the Clippers at third in the West, just kind of lurking all year. The Nuggets, led by probably the MVP Nikola Jokic, are the 4 seed currently. The Blazers number 5, the Lakers at 7, the Warriors. The Warriors are 8, the Grizzlies are 9, the Spurs are 10, Pelicans are 11th, the Kings are 12th, the Timberwolves are 13th, the Thunder and the Rockets are the bottom feeders in the West at 14 and 15. So let's talk about a team that you root for, the Knicks. So they're going to make the playoffs for the first time since the 2013 season. Where do they, rank? Obviously I just read 38 and 31. Where, in your mind, in the East, do they have a chance of making a run in the playoffs?
Making a deep run.
Yeah.
Making a deep run into the playoffs. I think they have a chance. Personally, I think they have a chance of just winning one series and possibly getting outed after that. But I think that they're well on their right path, basically. They're, even if they win one series, that's all you really need, because they're moving in the right direction. I'd be happy with that. That's why I want them. I'm really hoping that they get a 4 or 5, because I think that that's a more legitimate chance at winning a series. If they get the 6, it would be very difficult, because they'll be up either against Milwaukee or Brooklyn, most likely at the 3. So that's why, Miami, Atlanta, and the Knicks are going to be duking it out right now with these last 3 games. But I think that I think that nobody's going to want to play them too. They're a hard-nosed team. They play tough defense. They give up the lowest amount of points in the league throughout this entire season. If you're a good team, you don't want to match up with them. Even if you're the Bucks or the Nets right now and you landed the 3 seed, and you have to choose between the Hawks, Heat, and Knicks as being the potential 6 seed that you match up with, they don't want to play the Knicks. There's not a shot. The Knicks are a gritty team, and they pull out games, and they're good too. They're well coached, they're well tuned, and championship caliber teams, they have that. They just minus the talent. They have exactly what you need for a championship caliber team minus the talent, and they can definitely pick off somebody in the playoffs. Even if they were to fall to that 6, I think if they get a 4 or 5 seed, they're definitely winning one series. I think that they'll beat Miami or Atlanta in a series. I think that's like almost a definite. I'm very comfortable with that if they get a 4 or 5. So that's why I think it's important that they got to win these last 3 games and lock up either the 4 or 5 seed.
What's the feeling around New York right now? With the Knicks, is there a buzz? They haven't been this good. Like I said, they haven't.
It's all right. My phone was just ringing too.
Yeah.
We got a few distractions.
We did a great show. So, the NBA is, everybody says the NBA is better when the Knicks are good. They haven't made the playoffs since 2013. Like, how exciting is this as a New York Knicks fan? And like, if you've talked to any other fans around the New York area, what's the feeling like? Oh,
we're all hyped. It's really exciting. Like, me and most of my friends were all Knicks fans, growing up in New York, in the New York area. All my family's from New York, and growing up on the New York border in Connecticut, it's exciting, and you feel the buzz even around New York too. All the Knicks fans are coming out. This was very similar to when the Mets made it to the World Series back in 2015. You had such a big buzz going around in the city. The Knicks are New York's team, regardless of who's playing for the Brooklyn Nets. That's the matter of the case. And if you walk around New York City, everyone's a Knicks fan. Nobody. You walk around Brooklyn, you walk around New Jersey, you'll find a lot of Nets fans. But if you're walking around New York City, the Knicks are New York's team, regardless of if we have KD, Harden, Kyrie. So it's been unbelievable. Even watching these games, Madison Square Garden is electric right now at only 10% capacity, and hopefully that increases for the playoffs. I think it's going to increase up to a third, 33%, which would be fantastic. But they're making it known, and we've waited a long time for a competitive team. We haven't been over 500 or made the playoffs since 2013. So it's been a long time coming. And the honest, and Madison Square Garden's the mecca of basketball too. Everybody wants to play there in big games. And when the Knicks are good, that's when the NBA is at its best, because you get to showcase the best players in the league at the best arena in the league. So it's definitely been awesome. And I'm just hoping that, no matter what happens this year in the playoffs, we just sustain some motivation into next year, and we keep building on this, maybe add a few new pieces this off season, and we just keep it rolling, and we're starting to build something that can become a perennial winner.
In your mind, what is that next piece for the Knicks? You said earlier they have everything a championship team has minus the talent.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. So what's the next piece they need to go get?
So I have a personal blueprint that I think they need to do this offseason that I've already came across with. I think that Julius Randle can be a star or two, and I think RJ Barrett could be a good 3, but we need a 1A to Julius Randle's 1B, basically. Going out, obviously I would love Damian Lillard. It's going to cost a lot, and I don't know if Portland's going to trade him. You always hear, never have any idea if Damian Lillard on the market is a legit thing or not. But that's literally a perfect piece that we need, because it's a star point guard that can control the floor, control the momentum, and is a lights out shooter too, which is what we've been lacking all season. We haven't been the most efficient 3-point shooting team. But besides that, I like Victor Oladipo becoming a free agent. Bradley Beal, I don't think that Washington's going to trade him, but it definitely is something to check in on. But I think we need a player like that. Yeah. And we got 4 draft picks coming in this year. It looks like both of our first round picks is from Dallas and our own, so it's going to be in like the late teens most likely. We're going to need a point guard, and we need a shooter. So your boy,
hey,
Chicago boy,
you got Derrick Rose, which is why I'll be rooting for the Knicks in the postseason, because I cannot watch Derrick Rose and not root for that guy. You can't even be a basketball fan and not like D Rose.
Exactly.
It's not even about like a Chicago thing, which it is. But
yeah,
if the Knicks got Ayo Dosunmu, I think that'd be a great get for you guys, and I think it's somebody that might be there in that teens area. So fill in the blank for me on this sentence. Julius Randle is having the best Knicks season since
Carmelo Anthony. When he won the scoring title in 2012-13, I would say.
So let's compare those stats real quick, if we will. So Julius, 24 points a game, 10 boards, 5 assists. He's shooting 45% from the field, 41.5% from 3, 81% from the line. Carmelo Anthony, I'm pulling it up here real quick, from 2012, you said, right? That was the scoring title year?
The 12-13 season when we made it to the playoffs, he won the scoring title that year.
Right. 12-13 season. Carmelo averaged 28 points a game, 28.7 points a game, 2 assists and 6 boards. So yeah, I think that's a very good comp there. Pretty, they're different players. Obviously they play different positions, but just talk to me a little bit about what Julius Randle has meant to this team this year, because he's been the heart and soul of the Knicks, in my opinion.
He's taken that next step. And, when he was coming out of college, you probably remember the hype around him when he was in the top 100. Everybody knew he could potentially be a player like this in the NBA, because he was a great ball handler, elusive, good shooter, great basketball mind, all that kind of stuff. And he finally put it together. Oh my God, this is unbelievable. So, great basketball mind, and I'm gonna stop. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I'm like it like never rings, and of course it's
now when you got something to do. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So back to Julius Randle.
Mm-hmm.
He's been amazing. He's meant everything, and he's developing into the player that we thought that he could become, like his ceiling basically when he was coming out of Kentucky. And he's finally put it together this year. He's developed a jump shot, and what he's meant to the Knicks is just everything. He's our star, and he's going to be our piece that we can build around. We finally have a piece to build around. We thought it was Porzingis, and that didn't work out, and ended up being a blessing. It didn't work out because Randle is better than Porzingis. He does more, and he could. Porzingis can't lead a team. He's basically proven that in Dallas right now too. So he can be like a decent 2 or 3 on a good team, but he can't lead a team. Julius Randle can actually lead a team, and Julius Randle is a stud. So he's meant everything. They got 1 year left on his contract. I think part of my blueprint for this offseason is that they have to lock him up long term. He's got to be the piece that we build around, and we add depth to him. Even if we get like an Oladipo or one of those guys, if we draft a Dosunmu, to add to the young core, draft a Corey Kispert if he falls in the draft, one of those kind of guys, like a sharpshooter that we need. Even if you put all those guys around Julius Randle, like this is Julius Randle's core, and unless you get like a Damian Lillard or a Bradley Beal, then Randle is our star, and he's still going to be our star. Even if we were to get one of those guys, he would just be 1A, and the other guy would be 1B. So, yeah.
Absolutely, man. I love that take there, and I think you're exactly right. So let's talk about the other team in New York. You said no matter who's on the Nets, New York is a Knicks town. What is the Nets ceiling with a healthy James Harden? I believe he's about to be coming back in the lineup. Do you think it's finals or bust?
I think so. If they're fully healthy, it's finals or bust. I think it's winning the finals or bust, to be honest with you. If they're fully healthy, the way that team is designed, they should be unstoppable on the offensive end. And if they don't even win the finals, even if they make it to the finals and they lose, it's somewhat of a failure of a season for sure, I think. But they have to be fully healthy. If they're not fully healthy, it's difficult to do that. But if Harden, Durant, and Kyrie are fully healthy in the playoffs and they're all playing together, they're the most unstoppable team in the league. Mm-hmm. And that's what they wanted to accomplish. And if they don't end up, it's finals or bust pretty much. If they can make it to the finals, it's impressive. I personally think they have to win the finals or it's a bust. If everybody's completely healthy, but we'll see if that's the case. But they put together a ridiculous core of scorers, 3 of the greatest scorers we've ever seen in our lives, playing for one team. And it doesn't even matter if they're mediocre on the defensive end. Defense does win championships, but offense can win you championships if you're scoring 150 a night. So
Are you concerned at all with their lack of size in the front court and honestly lack of depth? I mean, DeAndre Jordan is very good. He's played in this league for a long time. You got a guy, Blake Griffin, who's played alongside DJ as well. And then, but I mean, Jeff Green, he's 6'8", and they started him at the 4. And Nicholas Claxton, who's a very promising young prospect, but I mean, hasn't shown a lot, and he's still very young. So does that concern you at all?
It concerns me if one of them's hurt, because Harden's always been a guy who can give you 40 to 45 minutes a night. And if KD and Kyrie are healthy, they should be getting the same. So you wouldn't even have to worry about it that much. They definitely do not have that much depth, though. That's for sure. You got Joe Harris who can shoot. You got Claxton's had a decent year. You got DeAndre Jordan, who's not his old self. Jeff Green, Landry Shamet, Bruce Brown. Like you got some pieces on the bench, but they're not. It's really not like a championship bench at all. But the question is, do you need a championship bench if KD, Harden, and Kyrie are able to play 40 minutes a night? You might not need it, but it definitely could hurt them. And especially if even one of them gets hurt, it's going to hurt them big time, because then you're taking away one of the big scorers, and other guys don't have to step up. And you can't bank on any of those guys stepping up in big moments in like a championship or anything.
Yeah, that's a great point. Do you need that bench if you have arguably the best player in the world when he's right, and Kevin Durant, and two of the best scorers in the league? Great point there. So I'm going to ask you about the Sixers and kind of wrap up the Eastern Conference talk, and then ask you about some Western Conference teams. So where do you think Embiid and Simmons rank as far as 1-2 punches go in the NBA?
I think they're one of the better ones. I love Simmons on the defensive end. I think that leaves a lot to be desired on the offensive end, but Embiid makes up for it. And I think Tobias Harris is a very good addition too, because he's a great scorer. Doesn't really do much else, but he can score. I think they're up there. They're not in the same realm as the tops, as the LeBron and AD, and whichever one of the two big three in Brooklyn you want to throw in there. You can count all three. They're up there. They're in like the same realm as like a Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, big two, I would say. With Embiid being their star, Embiid obviously is a finalist for MVP, but with Ben Simmons. Simmons holds it down on the defensive end, which helps it a lot. That's why I like the Sixers team and think that they could really, if they're fully healthy against a fully healthy Nets team, they could give them a little bit of a run. I think it would be a fun series, especially if that's the Eastern Conference Finals, because Doc Rivers is such a great coach too. He keeps them all in line, and it's shown the difference between Brett Brown and Doc Rivers this season too. The switching coaches.
Trust the process, man.
Process.
47-22. He's got him in first place. Doc Rivers, Coach of the Year candidate.
He's up there. He's got to be him, Quinn Snyder, Monty Williams with Phoenix. If you really, I keep going back and forth with who I think. I obviously think that Tom Thibodeau should win. If it was my award to give out, I would give it to Tom Thibodeau, just because of this team went from a 20-win team last year to possibly being a 4 or 5 seed. Like, it's incredible, and they have relatively the exact same team that they had last year. Especially their starting 5. But yeah, I would give it to Thibodeau. He's not going to end up winning it because they're only going to be like 5 or 6. It's going to end up going to like Quinn Snyder for the Jazz or Monty Williams. But out of those guys, I would probably give it to Monty Williams. Yeah. In Phoenix though, because even before they got Chris Paul last year, when Monty Williams took over, that 10 game run they went on in the bubble last year, since he's taken over in Phoenix, he has completely got them in tune, and he's a great coach. He's just really turned that franchise around in a short period of time. Chris Paul, gets most of the thanks for that, but it's which he should, because he's a fantastic player. But Monty Williams has done a great job. Like, if I can't give it to Thibodeau, I would give it to Monty Williams.
That's a beautiful transition here, because I want to talk about the Suns and Utah a little bit. Was Chris Paul the best offseason addition in the NBA from this last year?
Oh, I think so. He was the most meaningful. There's not a team that benefited on one move as much as the Suns did by trading for Chris Paul. And I was saying it, and I was saying it before too. Chris Paul in my opinion, is the biggest winner in NBA history that has never won an NBA championship, because his impact on the game is ridiculous. He's what he did with Oklahoma City last year was insane. What he did turning Phoenix around completely this year is insane. Devin Booker is a great player, but he was never able to even bring the Suns to the level that him and Chris Paul are able to bring them to. He didn't have much help around him. You can't really blame him. But Chris Paul is just another level of impact. It's unbelievable, and I agree. I think that's the one move, that the biggest move this offseason that helped out a team more than any other move.
Yeah, I don't think the Suns are sitting in second place if Chris Paul's not on the roster. I don't. Another guy, I'm going to pretty much jump back and forth here between Utah and the Suns. So Donovan Mitchell, his playoff stretch last year was very, very well documented. Is he going to have to be that dominant again this year for Utah to have success in the playoffs?
I think to a degree, yeah. They do have some good depth that'll help him out, but when he's on his best nights is when the Jazz are playing their best. He's the heart and soul of their offense, and I think he's going to have big games, and he's going to have some big star power, all-time great NBA playoff moments in order to get the Jazz over the hump. I do think that. But they do have some depth to help him out, though. You can't sleep on Clarkson, Mike Conley, Bogdanovich, Ingles. They're all NBA. They're all elite NBA scorers. They all do their part. Ingles is a knockdown 3-point shooter. Mike Conley is a smart veteran. that controls the floor. Jordan Clarkson is an elite scorer off the bench. So he's not going to have to drop 30 to 35 points a night for them to do it, but he's 100% going to have to be the leader and probably average around 25 points a game throughout the playoffs if they want any shot.
Of the two teams that I'm mentioning here, the Suns or the Jazz, which one of them is more likely to make a deep run in the Western Conference, in your opinion?
It's tough because I want to go with Chris Paul with his leadership with the Suns, but since the rest of the team is so inexperienced in the playoffs too, I want to say the Jazz because I feel like the Jazz are going to have a chip on their shoulder. They got bounced early in the bubble last year, and they got a veteran team, and their team's been in the playoffs now the last several years. They know what it's like to be in the playoffs, and they know what it's like to lose in the playoffs, and they're hungry to stop losing, and they've been dominant all season long. They want to prove to everybody that their number one seed isn't a fluke for the Jazz. So I would go with the Jazz to make it further than the Suns.
Absolutely. Team that we haven't really talked about is the Clippers. And I mentioned earlier, they've just kind of been lurking like all year. Obviously, they have Paul George. They have Kawhi Leonard, who quietly had a great year, I think averaging like 24, 25 points. How do you see them kind of shaking out in this playoffs? You know, they probably still have the bad taste in their mouth from last year and their whole exit. New coaching, and I don't know about new coaching staff, but new head coach with Tyronn Lue and but they add guys like Nick Batum and Serge Ibaka. So what do you think about the Clippers? Do they have a shot at making it to the Western Conference Finals here?
Oh, I definitely think so. I think that they're going to be one of the more competitive teams. They're another team that's tough and has a chip on their shoulder. And whenever you got a healthy Kawhi Leonard, you can't count them out of making a championship run. He's a winner. And he knows what it takes to win an NBA championship. He's done it twice with two different teams, and he wants to do it a third time with a third different team. So, you definitely can't count out the Clippers. I think that they're going to be tough. They're in, there's a few teams in the West that I really like, that I really think are just going to be tough outs, and the Clippers are one of them. They got good veteran depth too. Reggie Jackson, Nick Batum, as you said. Marcus Morris, like they've got all the pieces to win an NBA championship.
And they added Rajon Rondo too. That's a great pickup because they needed it. Exactly fits a need for them. They didn't have just a classic point guard, and playoff Rondo. What is he going to do this offseason? So I just have a couple more questions, and then I will do one more thing because I know you don't have too much time. But so the Golden State. They're back. Steph is averaging 31 points a game. He's in the MVP argument. He's just insane. Just what teams are starting to do with him. I'm pretty sure. Did you see the Suns last night when he's bringing the ball up the floor with like a minute to go? They got quadruple team. They got four dudes on him. Unbelievable. How far can he take the Warriors in this offseason, or not offseason, in this postseason? I mean, Draymond Green has already compared them to the We Believe Warriors, the 8 seed that knocked off the 1. Can this Warriors team do something similar?
It's going to be tough without Clay. If Clay were to be able to come back in the playoffs, they could possibly pick off the Jazz if they were the 8 seed, but because they're so well experienced and stuff. But just a team of Steph, Draymond, and the depth that they have. James Wiseman's out for the year too, and he was playing great. They got Damian Lee's been playing a ton. Toscano Anderson's been playing a ton, and those are all just like kind of fill-in guys that could fill out their bench for a competitive run maybe next season. But this year, I'm not expecting too much. It's amazing what Steph has done coming back from injury, possibly going to win the scoring title. Him and Beal are neck and neck, so it's going to be interesting to see who ends up getting the scoring title. But coming back from injury, doing everything he's done for Golden State. If Golden State was a top 3 team, he'd be the front runner to win his 3rd MVP, without a doubt. So, I think that it's fantastic what the Warriors have done. It's fantastic what Steph's done to possibly even take another step up from even where he was before. But I really, with the way that the Warriors' entire team is built, I don't see them. Even if they get a 7 or 8, being able to win a series against the Jazz. They might win a game or two. I could see if it's a 1 versus 8, they might even push it to a game 6. But I don't think, inevitably, I don't see them beating the Jazz.
Yeah. I got you. I got you. I'm kind of in the same. I'm in the same wavelength here. Same kind of thinking. So,
Yeah.
give me your one team that you believe is a lock to make the NBA Finals, and one team that is a sleeper. It doesn't matter which conference. It could be either one.
That's good. That's good. That's tough. I keep going back and forth in my NBA Finals picks, but I really think that this might be one of the most wide open playoffs we've seen in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Because you go into the playoffs, you always think LeBron's going to make it and blah blah blah. But this year there's so many teams that are up in the air. I think if I had to say a lock, I really would say if the Nets are fully healthy, I think that they're going to win the East. If they're fully healthy, they're as close to a lock as there is. I really don't see anybody in the East stopping them. I would love for us to match up with them in the second round and give them a little bit of fit. And if we were to somehow pick off Brooklyn in the second round, the city would go crazy. That would be like the most nuts thing you'd ever see. But if Brooklyn's completely healthy, it's tough, but I'm not too sure anybody's going to beat them in the East. I think they should. That's why I think that their finals are bust. If they're fully healthy, there's no reason they shouldn't make the finals. And then the sleeper team, it's tough. I think, I like Portland. They've been really locked in this year. It would be a tough matchup if they get a 4-versus-5 against the Nuggets in the first round. That would be really tough. But I would say either the Blazers. I also do like the Heat because the Heat could fall to a 5 or 6, and they're coming off an Eastern Conference championship last year. You never know what they're going to do. Those would be my two sleepers. I think it's tough to choose between both of them. I would, if I have to choose one, I'll go with the Blazers because I love Damian Lillard, and I think that Blazers team has played great all season, and they're definitely in the mix to pull off some upsets and maybe make a deep run.
Absolutely. So let's do your NBA awards quickly. So I want your MVP, sixth man of the year, rookie of the year, and your coach of the year.
Perfect. All right. So my MVP is Nikola Jokic. Has to be. He's having the best season, best passing season, especially out of any center in NBA history. It wasn't too long ago that we were saying Marc Gasol was arguably the best passing center of all time. He was only averaging 5 assists a game. Jokic is averaging 8. I think it goes kind of unnoticed how incredible that is for a 7-footer to be doing that. But he's definitely the MVP, and the Nuggets are going to end up with the 4 seed too. So it's high enough for him to be able to win MVP. Embiid is definitely the runner-up. I think it's really just a 2-man race between Jokic and Embiid. It's going to be one of the two of them, and for me, it's going to be Jokic. And then 6th man of the year is going to be Jordan Clarkson, I think. He's been great all season, averaging around 18 points a game, coming off the bench for the best team in the NBA. He's been a knockdown scorer. He's been one of their key pieces of their second unit, and he's by far been the most dominant 6th man that's played this season. There's been we've seen Lou Williams and stuff has had a little bit of a down year. The usuals that we usually see in the 6th man of the year award race have not had the best of years. So I think Clarkson. I think this might be one of the easiest ones. I think it's definitely going to be Clarkson, and no one else really close. Mm-hmm. Defensive player of the year, I think is going to be Ben Simmons. I think what he's done in every aspect on the defensive end has been great. He can guard any position. He's a 6'10" point guard who can guard a center if you need. He's an elite defender. He might be the best defender in the NBA, but you also can't count out Rudy Gobert winning his 3rd. Rudy Gobert's had a ridiculous season again this year. And if Miles Turner didn't get hurt, I think Miles Turner was right in the conversation too. He was averaging 3.5 blocks a game this year. So I think Ben Simmons will inevitably win it. And then coach of the year, the next one. Coach of the year, as alluded to before, I think that Monty Williams is going to win it. I think he's the most deserving if you can't give it to Thibodeau. I personally still think that Thibodeau, I really think Thibodeau deserves it. He might not end up winning it just because of, with the better teams that are in the league. We always see that award going to one of the top teams a lot of times. But I feel like it'll be Monty Williams if they're going to end up choosing a top they're going to end up choosing like a top 1 or 2 seed in each conference. I think it's going to end up being Monty Williams because he's done a great job with the Suns.
Yeah, and then did you say your rookie of the year or no? That's the last.
Oh no, I didn't. I missed that part. Anthony Edwards.
Okay.
Yeah,
I agree with that too.
yeah.
I think it would have been LaMelo if he didn't get hurt, but I think
Exactly. And it's only a 2-man race. That's another one like MVP. It's either going to be Edwards or LaMelo. And if LaMelo didn't get hurt, it was going to be LaMelo. And Edwards has had a great second half of the season, though, too. He's averaging almost 20 points a game now for the year. So I think it's going to have to be Edwards because he's played all season, too. He hasn't been hurt. So I think he's going to end up winning it. But LaMelo's going to be a close second.
Absolutely. So I just want to say about Jokic and the MVP, I completely agree. On this show, like months ago, like when the NBA season started, I had Joey Held from the Chris Bounce Pass newsletter. He predicted Jokic as his MVP when he was currently plus 1,400 odds. So I hope you've been tuned in since then, making you big bucks, plus 1,400 Jokic to win the MVP. That's going to cash. I'm pretty sure that's going to cash. So I like your picks there. I will say about Jokic again, real quick. Nick Wright was saying that he'd be the worst MVP that we've had in like 35 years. What about 26 and a half, 10 and 8 assists as a 7-footer is bad.
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense. He's another one of those fucking idiots that gets these platforms that Fox Sports has a lot of those dudes they pay that shouldn't fucking be anywhere near a screen, but they just say this shit for clicks and for likes. Like, I'm just surprised that Nick Wright could take 5 minutes away from fucking chugging LeBron James's cock to even say anything about Nikola Jokic. But that's not how you grow the game, is dick riding one fucking player. We need to be highlighting all of the incredible players in this league, and Nikola Jokic is one of them. You do not see guys like this that are 7 foot to almost 300 pounds. He's dishing out 8. He's literally a fucking point guard.
Yeah.
And he's just in a center's body. He's averaging almost a triple double. Like this whole argument, worst MVP we've had in 35 years. Why? Because he's not named LeBron James. Okay, yeah. Nick, right? Okay, that's my little rant about that. But before we close this out, one guy I think we really need to talk about is Russell Westbrook. Just because he broke the triple-double record. He now has the most triple-doubles in NBA history. He broke Oscar Robertson record. How significant is this, Paul?
It's extremely significant, and it goes to show the kind of dominance that he has on the game. You know, there's a lot of people that don't like him because they say he's stat padding and all that kind of stuff, but they've been winning. You know, you see he's been dropping all these triple-doubles, and the Wizards are in the 10 spot right now. He's been dealt a tough hand sometimes, you know, with KD leaving, but he kept Oklahoma City afloat for all those years, averaging those triple-doubles. And, you know, you can't pad stats, you know, in the NBA. If you're a 6'3" point guard consistently averaging 11 rebounds a game, anybody who hasn't played organized basketball in their lives don't realize how hard that is.
Yeah.
To go up against guys almost a foot taller than you and being able to bring down 10 plus rebounds a game. Like, he's an animal. He really is. He's a beast, and it's time that he starts getting the recognition that he deserves. I hate when, you know, people say that he's overrated and, you know, he just pads stats, doesn't care about winning, all that kind of stuff. It's just, none of that is true. He's an amazing player, a top 50 player all time. He's absolutely incredible. He's already bound for the Hall of Fame, in my opinion, and just a championship would just make it that much better. But he's absolutely incredible. And, you know, especially in the NBA, which is the elite of the elite in the basketball world, you know, the best basketball players in the entire world. He's now scored the most triple doubles all time. Like, it's just something crazy to think about.
I got to see him play in person once, and he dropped 44 points on the Pacers. The Thunder ended up losing that game, so we were actually getting ready to leave, like we're putting our jackets on, and the Thunder come out of a timeout, and he just throws up this prayer from 3 and banks it in. We instantly sit back down, like we're all back in. But yeah, that was like back in like high school, like early high school when like his first few years with the Thunder. I was so into him and Durant together. I mean, honestly, Russ, like I mentioned, Derrick Rose, who else, and Dame are probably my 3 favorite players in the league right now.
Yeah.
If you had to rank Westbrook all time, like an all-time point guard list, would you put him top 5, top 10? I mean, triple double. Like he's got the NBA record, most triple doubles all time. That's insane.
I I would say top 10. It's when you think about the greatest, I actually put out about a year ago now on my blog, I put out my top 50 uh players of all time, and he was 47, I think, in my top 50. So that's top 10 in the point guards. When you think about Magic and Jerry West, if you want to consider Jerry West a point guard, and John Stockton, Isaiah Thomas, all that kind of stuff, he's becoming very, very close to all of them. He might not be, if you don't want to put him in the top 5, I understand that, but he's top 10 all time, I think. If you make a top 10 list, he's there. He's absolutely incredible. He's achieved so many incredible things for a point guard too. Like putting up this many 10 plus rebound seasons is absolutely ridiculous. So I would say yes. Like he might not be top 5. You could definitely like sit down and have a debate about that, but he's 100% top 10. There's no doubt about that. He's well back. If he decides to retire today, he's a Hall of Famer, and there's not even any debating it.
And I think there's definitely something to be said about him playing for Scott Brooks. He played for him a long time in Oklahoma City, probably getting that comfortability back that I don't think he had in Houston. There was just a lot of pressure on him. It felt like I don't even know, but he just never seemed comfortable, never seemed happy in Houston. I'm glad he's in a better situation now with the Wizards. Let me ask you this. This is for real. Last question, then we're going to plug your shit real quick, and then we're going to close it out. So would you rather have a guy like Russell Westbrook that is like a walking triple-double, or a guy like Steph Curry who can just shoot anybody out of the gym as your starting point guard? I feel that's such a tough question. I know.
It's such a tough one. I guess it would depend on like the team I have around me, but if I had to just go with one, I would maybe say Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Just because he's a flamethrower and runs the offense. He does everything. Can rebound, he can pass, he is a great playmaker, and he's lights out shooter too. You have to have a couple guys on him, and it leaves everyone else open too. It spreads the floor. I would probably have to go with Steph Curry. That's a very tough one though. It's you can go either way. You can make an argument for either of them.
Yeah. It's just with the insane year that Steph has had, we mentioned earlier, he's averaging like 31 points a game. And then Westbrook, like there was a certain point at this, as the season was winding down, he could have just stopped. He could have had like no stats, like zeros across the board. He still would have averaged triple double for the year, which is insane. So this is the last thing I want to do, because the last time you were on the show, I had you pick an NBA game for me, and it was wild as shit. And like the Pacers ended up covering at like the last second. So I'm about to read off some lines, and you gotta tell me, and I'm gonna bet it here. Okay, so the Hawks -7 versus the Wizards, the Celtics -6 versus the Cavaliers, the Nets -5 versus the Spurs, the Mavericks -9.5 versus the Pelicans, or the Jazz -1 versus the Trailblazers, or the Lakers -8 versus the Rockets.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Because last one was a wild one.
Yeah.
And it was really close. But I'm going to go with the Lakers, I think, honestly. Like, even if they did, I think LeBron is trying to come back today. Even if they don't, though, the Rockets have been so bad that the Rockets only have 16, 17 games, and they're trying to lose out too. They're trying to get the best chance of getting Cade Cunningham, without a doubt. So
that's
so if I had to go, I'd probably go with the Lakers, honestly.
Yeah. Lakers -8.5 is currently -110 on the Barstool Sportsbook against the Houston Rockets. I'm going to lock that in because, it worked last time. So we're going to ride with that. Paul, thank you so much for joining me, man. I know this went a little bit longer than anticipated. I did have some draft stuff I want to ask about. We'll just have to have you back on. We'll do a draft preview show. But you just mentioned Cade Cunningham most likely going to the Rockets. I think he's probably the safest pick. He might not have the highest ceiling versus Green and God damn it, the guy from
Suggs.
USC,
All right, Evan
Green,
Mobley.
Suggs, and Mobley,
Yeah.
but he has the highest floor. Like he's so he's compared to like a LeBron Luka type, just minus the scoring, but like he's going to be able to plug and play offense, defense, and running that stuff. But we'll talk about that at a different time. Paul Lombardi, host of the 3&D from Review and Preview Sports. This is your time. Plug anything you want to plug. I know you write a blog. You're on Twitter. You got the podcast. Tell me all about that stuff, where you can find it.
For sure. Thanks, Andy, for having me on anytime. Looking forward to doing NBA draft, and you can check me out. I'm the host of the 3&D on Review and Preview Sports Network. You can check out our YouTube, Review and Preview Sports. I post the full episode. We go live every Monday night at 7 through Facebook Live at Review and Preview Sports, and I post the entire episode to YouTube afterwards. And I also post highlights, different segments if we have different people on, all that kind of stuff. You can also listen to it via podcast wherever you listen to your podcast, on Spotify, Apple, whatever it is. And I also write too. You can check out my blog, The Sports World According to Paul.wordpress.com. It's pretty long, but it's you can check out. I do a ton of NBA draft coverage throughout that. If you're a big NBA draft fan, you should definitely check out the blog. I post my big boards. I come out with my mock draft right before every year's draft, and to do a variety of other coverage across the MLB, NFL, and in the NBA too. So those are where you can catch me. And I want to thank you, Andy, again for having me on. It's definitely been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was a very fun episode. We had a few technical difficulties. I lost the ring light a couple times. We had the phone ringing. We had the dog barking. So great episode, but awesome NBA analysis, man. I love your show and what you're doing over at Review and Preview Sports. Seriously, it's awesome. Go check it out. Mondays, 7 p.m. Eastern time on Facebook Live at Review and Preview Sports. Paul Lombardi, thank you so much. This has been episode 60 of the Brew Party podcast. You can find the Brew Party wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, all that good stuff. www.thebrewparty.com has all of our episodes. It's got links on where to listen. It's got links to all of our social media. Go ahead and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Brew Party. On Instagram, we're so close to 300 followers. Help us get there. On Facebook at The Brew Party Podcast. And go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube, youtube.com/The Brew Party. The video for this podcast will be out on our YouTube as well as the audio version. Once again, I want to thank my guest, Paul Lombardi, for joining me. This has been The Brew Party Podcast. I'm Andy Hopper, reminding you, crack open a cold one and enjoy the rest of your day, your weekend, whatever it is. Just thank you for joining the party. Like, rate, comment, review, subscribe, leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts, trying to get up to 100 ratings and reviews on there. All right, we are out of here.